Hi guys, this is Tom here, and I'm going to do a video for you guys, for those who do watch this, my theories on Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Now, before anyone asks, I'm gonna guarantee some people are gonna say, but where's the proof that Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is gonna even start? Well, if you've not already seen some of the YouTubers having their videos of proof that Scott Cawthon's been secretly confirming Five Nights at Freddy's 3 on his website, then I'll quickly sum it up for you. Basically, since Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was released, his website has shown an offline image and nothing else. Then some clever person decided to save the image and edit it. Well, not so much edit it, but change the filters of that image via video editor. And what came up was what's a selection of what I'm showing right now. Now, with that said, I'm going to tell you what they mean and where in the timeline Five Nights at Freddy's 3 will be taking place. This is all speculation, nothing is guaranteed 100% confirmed, and just as a notice, my theory does have relevance and is based partially on the information given via Game Theory. If you don't know what Game Theory is, I really recommend watching that channel and the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2 theory of it. Believe me, they're really good, and the information and some of the ideas that comes from it have influenced my way of looking into things. But without further ado, I'll just get straight into it. Right. So to start off, Five Nights at Freddy's 1 started in 1990. Well, the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 is happening in 1993. We can establish this by the minimum wage we actually receive when you get the paycheck, and that's roughly about $4.25, and that coincides exactly with the minimum wage required in 1993. Whereas Five Nights at Freddy's 2, even on the paycheck, it shows you that it's dated 1987, as well as using the minimum wage for 1987. Now, from this information, would you think Five Nights at Freddy's 3 would be a prequel? So, does the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 come before Five Nights at Freddy's 2? Or is it a sequel to Five Nights at Freddy's 2 or 1? And I tell you that the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 will happen after Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Simply because of the information we get on the picture that says 30 years later. Now, with how Scott's been doing everything so far, regarding that payments and such, it would seem silly for him to go too far ahead of time. So, does it mean 30 years after the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1? No, because that would take place in the year 2027. No, 23 I should say. So, that's far too many years ahead of us, because we're only in 2014 at the moment. Well, just at the end of it. So does that mean it's the 30 years from the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 2, 1987? Which would make it 2017. But that's still a bit too far ahead of time. So how about we go back in time, right to the very beginning, when the company first started. And when I mean started, I mean Fredbear's Family Diner, which happened to be in 1973. Now, before you ask, how did you know that's the case? By simple, breakdown. On the first night of Five Nights at Freddy's 1, the phone guy tells you that the company, or the animatronics, have been singing the same stupid songs for 20 years. Now, from that, you can safely say, okay, so the company's been around for 20 years since then. And let's go back, using the minimum wage, as I already said about at the paycheck, we can confirm it's 1993. So 20 years I should say, from 1993 makes it 1973. And this is where the original company started, and where the murders first began. So 30 years from 1973 will make it 2003, being the only logical year for the events to take place in. But even so, you can say that, but after Five Nights at Freddy's 1, all the animatronics were scrapped, the company got shut down. There was nothing more after that. Until you take in consideration that there's likely a buyer that bought it back up and wanted to revive the company, which would make sense. And after everything that's happened, why would you want to risk starting from having gained all the licensing for the other characters, when you could just focus on the one, aka Freddy, the most iconic out of the group. But the key thing is here, as much as I'm only so far going as 30 years later, there's been an interesting line of comparisons if you actually compare it to the actual living brand of Chuck E. Cheese. If Five Nights at Freddy's we can safely say that Five Nights at Freddy's was inspired by the concept of Chuck E. Cheese, and it seems Scott's been using the information about it, or certain years, for very specific reasons, and I shall explain why. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, it's 1987. For Chuck E. Cheese, in 1984, the original company for Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theatre and another company called Showbiz Pizza Place merged. So therefore they had a lot more money and also was able to expand. And in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the company has expanded, it's been successful, and they're at a bigger site and able to afford new animatronics and seeing how that goes. If we go forward to the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, in 1993, we find out that Chuck E. Cheese actually underwent a redesign, changing the company to just Chuck E. Cheese, not Chuck E. Cheese Pizza, in 1994 to 1995. And if we go back to the very beginning, Chuck E. Cheese originally was opened up as Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theatre in 1977. Can you see where I'm going through with this idea? And, just to add the icing on the cake, the company celebrated its 30th anniversary in 2007. So, as much as everyone's known the obvious is based on Chuck E. Cheese, has anyone else noticed the similarities by the certain events happening during each of these specific time areas, whether give a few years out? Probably not. But either way, if Five Nights at Freddy's 3 does happen, let's have a double check and see if I'm right. If the paycheck at the end of the week doesn't give you a year, let's double check and see if, I want you all to check if the payment, I should say, is $5.15 per hour. Now, going away from 30 years later, I'm going to talk about why only one left, which is obviously what I'm saying is if it's animatronic wise, it's going to be just Freddy, as Freddy Fazbear, or else it wouldn't be called Five Nights at Freddy's 3. It'd be called something else. So that seems like an easy one. But there's also another theory that I've got, and that's there's only one more person to get revenge. AKA, there's only one other person that needs to die. And for that, I'm trying to say that for each event across the Five Nights timeline, there's been multiple killers, not just one. And even though I don't have any proof for this one, it just seems a bit coincidental that in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, the phone guy gets killed off by all the animatronics. And in my eyes, he was in the storeroom when this happened, as you hear in Night 4. It's Foxy banging on the door. Also, Chica's in the room, and Bonnie's in the room, and Freddy's in the room, and then gets killed by Golden Freddy. And the only place that would seem logical to have all of them in the same place would be in the spare parts room, even if it's just the heads. And that links into my theory of they are watching us. But before I even go to that, I'm going to continue on and just explain why I think there's one more target. When we go back to Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the security guy that you are gets attacked by none other than the Mangle during the day of the 7th day. Even though we don't see this happen. I say this simply because, obviously, if you go as far as listening to Night 6, you get told that there's one more event scheduled, and it's a birthday party, and you're the day guard, and you need to keep an eye on all the animatronics and make sure no one gets hurt. And yet, there's the bite, and the company the place gets shut down immediately. That, to me, says the security guard was possibly a killer as well. Even though we don't see any proof of it, and the only relevance close enough is there's a security guard in one of the secret mini games that comes and attacks Freddy after chasing the marionette. But again, like I say, there's no proof to it, but it just seems coincidental that the previous night guard doesn't say he was given a Freddy Fazbear mask either. Only you have. And with that knowledge, if you've got a Freddy Fazbear head given to you to use at night, who's to say that you're the one that's tampered with him previously? You tampered with him on the 7th night to get the custom nights, so who's to say you're not the killer? Now, if we're going further back, who is the killer from the first game, Fredbear's Diner, as seen in the mini game for in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, you've got the mini game where you play as Freddy Fazbear feeding the children, and the child outside the event gets killed by a stranger in a car. But we never know who it is. So who could it be? That I honestly don't know, but I don't think it's the phone guy. I think the phone guy killed children during the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1, meaning he was a completely different killer, and that the children in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 that was killed was done by the character you play as. Meaning, as I said, there are multiple killers, as it seems the old animatronics from the first from Fredbear's Diner was possessed by the one dead child, and then the old side had to close down due to the animatronics smelling, meaning those had to be stuffed with children too, so there's been murders there. And obviously you can say, oh, well, someone's just tampered with the animatronics in number 2, but in the minigames you see bodies everywhere, and why would they be there all scattered across the room, unless they've been murdered too, meaning there's another murderer. And obviously in Five Nights at Freddy's 1 you've got the animatronics again, but then they're all new costumes, and then those are possessed. So we're counting at maybe nearly 15-20 children that have been killed. So far at least, if what I'm saying is correct. But I don't have really any proof to go by. So finally finishing off to they are watching us, I honestly think that they've got the old animatronic heads from the past. And as much as it kind of contradicts there's only one left, think of it this way. In Five Nights at Freddy's 1, when you look into the storeroom, on the odd occasion, you'll have all the heads, including the endoskeleton, stare at you. Like, some of them that are just looking casually will look shocked, some will look a bit afraid, whereas the others just look like they're coming to get you. Meaning, it's likely those heads were the ones that have got the one. I don't know exactly, but they're all looking at you through the camera, so they're watching you. And wouldn't it, if you look at places like Planet Hollywood, example in real day, some places like that would have memorabilia and like icons of their past, something that represents them. So for that, what's wrong to say that possibly we're going to have the heads of the old animatronics on display, especially as it's like a kids diner. It just shows you as like a mini museum as well. So it's like a gift shop. So how can I word this without sounding weird? if there is a gift shop in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, my theory is that they're going to be, it's going to have, it's going to be a sort of mini museum where there is going to be animatronic heads from all the original characters. So the original Freddy Fazbear from Fredbear's Diner, the animatronics to how they originally looked in the original Five Nights at Freddy's place, all the toy ones, even though they were scrapped, their heads for to be on display, and then the heads from the Five Nights at Freddy's 1. So we've got so many heads at the moment now, it's hard to try and keep count. You've got 1 from Fredbear's Diner, then you've got 4 from the original site of Freddy Fazbear Entertainment. That makes 5. 6 if you count Golden Freddy. Then you've got Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and that's another 10. So we've gone from 5 to 15, maybe 16 if you count Golden Freddy, 17 if you count the marionette. And then you add another 4 onto that 15, and you've got 19. Again, this is not including the Golden Freddy or the marionette. If you do, that's maybe, what? It's like over 20 heads, all staring at you. And no offense, that would be creepy as hell, just seeing the past staring at you. And obviously, makes you think that, why are they after you? Well, you don't know. Could it be you're the killer, the original killer? Who knows? But until new evidence comes up, this is about as much as I've got at the moment. It seems like I'm pulling at straws, but who knows? Maybe I'm onto something. Maybe I'm just playing the guessing game. Maybe I'm completely wrong. What are your theories or thoughts on this? Anyways, I've been yammering on for too long, and hopefully everyone has a good Christmas and New Year, and Scott will give us new information. Fingers crossed. And I think I'm going to go back to Five Nights at Freddy's 1, just to hopefully this time I won't have Golden Freddy attack me 2 nights in a row, on night 1 and night 2. No offense, Gold Freddy, that was not funny. Anyways, till next time, guys. Ciao.